guest analyst today is none other than one of our favorite persons, Gbolahan Olojede. Thank you so much, Gbolahan, for being a part of the show this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us.
Gbolahan is a public affairs analyst. And Gbolahan, my first question to you today is, how would you assess the current state of Nigeria's electoral system?
Well, we're so far away from where we ought to be. But we have also come so far. We've made certain progress, but we still have a long journey ahead of us. I remember the early elections when this republic was born in 1999. Those early elections were horrendous. They were very horrible. But over the period, we have introduced a lot of new things, and the electoral process has improved from what it used to be. But we are still not quite where we ought to be. There are issues around the electoral laws that we need to amend and make it more suitable to us. There are still issues around security, vote buying, so many other issues that are still on the table. Even the internal democracy within the parties are horrendous as they are right now. So there's a lot to be done.
Right.
All right.
You know, when Vivian was talking about the introduction, she mentioned Rivers State is the most recent one that we can just stretch our hands and pick. But using the recent local government elections in Rivers State, do you see a hope or a change coming anytime soon in Nigeria's electoral system, where we see elections happen and then the next thing we're seeing some sort of violence and all of that? How do we see the change coming anytime soon?
The local government elections, which is what Rivers State did recently, is one of the most one of those elections that are still at the lowest end of the chain, as far as how an election should be is concerned. Number one, there are no elections at the local government level. Typically, they are all selection.
Really?
The governor solely decides who will run in those elections, and the party of the ruling party, the ruling party in the state, or whoever the governor wants to win. Because don't forget that in the case of Rivers State, the ruling party in Rivers State is actually PDP. Excuse me. But because the governor was having problem with PDP, he decided that all the people he wanted to run should go and run under the umbrella of another party,
The APP. Yes.
And literally everybody won, apart from only one local government. They won almost literally all the wards as well.
Yeah.
It was the same thing we had in Benue State, which had the same local government election. The same thing we had in Akwa Ibom State, which had the same local government election. The ruling party simply select, in fact, don't let me even say the ruling party in this. Let's say the governor of the state simply select some people, and those are the people that will win. So it is at the lowest ebb at the local government elections.
All right.
The one above the local government are even still better, in spite of the major challenges that we have.
So
the violence in the Rivers State election did not happen during the election.
After.
It happened after the swearing in.
Yeah.
So it's even a peculiar case. The Rivers State is a peculiar case. He had nothing to even do with the election, the violence,
All right, so if you say what we have at the lowest tier of government, which is the local government, if you say what we have is selection and not election, what major reforms then do you think are needed to ensure free and fair elections, both at the federal, state, and local government, levels of governance?
Sorry, can you recap that question? I missed part of it.
So I'm saying earlier on, you said selection is what happens at the local government and not election. And that's very disturbing, right? Correct. So my question to you now is, what major reforms are needed to ensure free and fair elections at the federal, state, and local government levels?
Well, at the local government level, which is the worst, that's where I'm going to start from. The state electoral commissions, because those local government elections are conducted by the state electoral commissions. We need reform at the level of the state electoral commission. There have been even arguments that rather than allow this state electoral commission to run those elections, we should allow INEC, which is the federal one, the one at the center, to run local government elections, because it is an established fact that INEC does better election than any of the state electoral commissions that we have in the country, who don't do it. Really, they don't do election. What they do, like I said, is basically selection. So we need to look at how to strengthen the state electoral commission, make them a bit more independent than what we currently have. And that may be part of the legal reform. On the legal reform side of things, let's look at the laws, setting up those electoral commissions, and see how we can make those laws stronger. The other part is that we need to also encourage people to participate more in the local government elections. A lot of people don't go out to vote on local government elections. They don't even know who these local government people are, and they don't care. So an awareness that makes them want to participate at the local government elections is part of what we also need to drive, to encourage, to ensure that more people participate in those elections. If you take a sample of 10 people, 10 voters, in any state in Nigeria, you will be lucky to have 2 people who participate in local government elections out of those 10 voters. So it has to change.
Right.
Then people are worried more about insecurity issues at local government elections. So we also need to improve the security security environment associated with the local government elections.
Right.
I don't believe that making INEC to come and run local government elections is going to be a sustainable solution.
Right. We need to understand, and thank you for that explanation, but this is even beyond the local government election. We're looking at the whole electoral process as a whole. And you mentioned something about apathy, voter apathy. It's a major concern for us. A lot of people don't even go out to the polls. You cited some reasons. So I'm holding on to the security concerns. Now, let's talk about the Electoral Act of 2022. When it came into the fore, we all thought that, okay, maybe we'll see some adjustments and changes here and there. But I'd like to ask you, in what ways do you think the Electoral Act of 2022 has improved the electoral process, and how can these also help to address the issue of voter apathy in Nigeria?
Okay, that law brought a few things on the table, or helped us to think in certain directions. For example, technology had a role to play post that law. We saw how the issue of voters, is a verification now, or validation at the polling booth was made electronic. Now, that in itself is transformational. And anybody who voted in the 2023 election and got accredited at the polling booth will attest to the fact that those machines worked. And they accredited the voter really fast. Some of them within a few seconds, you are already accredited. That you know, okay, this is a registered voter and this is in the right polling booth. Now, despite that, we also, apart from that, was the introduction of IREV. IREV, incidentally, had nothing to do with the law. The law did not recognize or capture IREV in any way in the books. However, the thinking with IREV was to be able to support the introduction of technology which has been done at the level of accreditation. If you're able to accredit people electronically, then can we also have some election monitoring that are also electronic, and that was what gave birth to IREV. But we saw what happened with IREV at that particular election.
Yeah.
Not only was it jettisoned, even when it came to issues of litigation later on, that was when most of the people realized that IREV was not part of the law. So we need to be able to ensure that the reforms that we are going to make. Number one, take cognizance of the reports from the last set of elections. There are election reports, those ones conducted by civil society organizations, by international observers. There are reports even by INEC in itself. So we should dissect this report, see what came out of those reports, and use them to strengthen the legal framework, the Electoral Act, like you said. Use them to strengthen it so that the outcome will be an inspiration will inspire people, will incentivize them to want to come out and vote again. If people cannot trust the system, if they don't believe that the system will eventually generate an output that is realistic in line with the voting pattern, then we are going to continue to have voter apathy.
All right.
As it were.
That is very well said. And just so we ensure that this is not just an abstract affair, let's talk about some real life experiences, right? During elections, we've had analysts say that they had to buy fuel to power the generating sets to charge some of these electronic devices which you talked about, right? These are some of the challenges faced. But what other challenges have you experienced during elections that you think we should draw the attention of authorities to as we talk about electoral reforms generally?
Okay, of course, there is still a lot of vote buying going on in Nigeria. Some of them happen before the election. Some of them happen right on the election days. The electoral process has recognized this, because I remember that in some of the elections we saw this DSS, we saw EFCC trying to come into that space to prevent, so to say, or to dissuade people from being able to activate vote buying. But if what we do is to try and curb vote buying on election days, and vote buying has already happened before the election days, then there is still a gap that is happening right there. So we must be able to do something about vote buying. Number two is electoral violence. There was still a lot of violence during the last election, where people were prevented from voting, or people were told you cannot vote for a particular candidate. If that is the person you want to vote for, leave this place. And it was literally impossible, even for the security agent. Don't forget that the policemen that are meant to be at the polling booth were not supposed to carry arms.
Yeah.
So the question you ask yourself is, if you were a policeman, though you were there to provide security, but the law says you cannot carry arms in that polling booth.
Yeah.
If there is violence, what do you do as a policeman? How do you protect the people? How do you even protect yourself? Not to talk of the people. So there are still challenges around how to even manage issues of violence. But as long as people think there might be violence, or that they might be attacked, or they might be prevented from voting, it will also still contribute to voter apathy, which is a critical issue around our electoral process.
Right. You know, you've said so much on this, and just before you go, in 30 seconds, a lot of people have lost hope in the whole electoral process, and they don't even see themselves doing this again. What's that one encouragement you give to Nigerians to stir them up a bit in terms of voting and electioneering in Nigeria in 30 seconds?
My word to Nigerians is that they should not get tired. Those countries that we envy, they did not get there overnight. I was shocked reading from the Library of Congress in the US to find out that delegates were being bribed about 100 years ago in American elections. So it is not everything and anything we are seeing today have happened in those mature democracies. If they had given up, they would not be where they are today. So the challenge is for us to continue to reform and improve the process we have. 250 years of elections in America, and how many years now? In 25 years in Nigeria are not the same. Right. So we should keep at it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bola Olajede. It's been a delight, having this conversation with you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your time with us. We appreciate.
Thanks for having me.